They say guilt is a feeling. Well, I say guilt is a confession. And the kind of guilt we're talking about today ain't personal. It's historical, it's inherited, it's political. And above all, it's true. You want to talk about white guilt? Fine. Let's talk about what that guilt is guilty of. It's guilty of silence when our people were chained. It's guilty of comfort while our backs built their cities. It's guilty of turning its head while dogs were loosed on our children, hoses sprayed down our grandmothers, and bullets found the hearts of our fathers. That's the guilt they feel. And that's the guilt they should feel. But don't you dare mistake guilt for justice. Don't you confuse apology with atonement. And don't let a tear on the cheek of the privileged become a substitute for the liberation of the oppressed. They love to talk about healing. They love to talk about unity. But you can't heal what you refuse to diagnose. You can't unite with someone who's still got their boot on your neck and tells you to calm down while you're choking. White guilt is not virtue. It's not noble. It's not revolutionary. It's simply the emotional echo of a history they refuse to reckon with. It's the cry of a thief who got caught red-handed, but wants praise for saying, "I'm sorry," while still holding the stolen goods. And what do they say now? We weren't there. We didn't do it. That was the past. But the wealth in their banks is built on the poverty in our neighborhoods. The land they inherited is fertilized with the blood of our ancestors. The laws that protect them are the same laws that patrol us. So let me be clear. Guilt is not the goal. We don't want your guilt. We want your change. We want your truth. And if guilt wakes you up, then don't roll over and fall back asleep in a dream of denial. Don't perform guilt to feel better about yourself. Use that guilt to stand against the system that gave you privilege at the expense of our pain. Use that guilt to dismantle the structures your forefathers built on stolen time and stolen breath. White guilt is not justice. It's a confession of unaddressed historical crimes. It is not a virtue. It is not redemption. It is not absolution. It is an echo, a murmur from the conscience of a society built on stolen land, stolen labor, and stolen lives. Guilt is the ache of a wound that was never healed, not even acknowledged fully. And when white guilt surfaces, it is not a revolutionary act. It is a delayed reaction. It is the face of a long denied truth finally brushing up against the mirror of reality. But a mirror only reflects. It doesn't transform. That's where the lie begins. Guilt is easy. Guilt is safe. Guilt costs nothing if it doesn't lead to reckoning. A person feels guilty when they know deep down that something they've benefited from came at someone else's expense. But what happens in a society where that benefit was accumulated over centuries, cemented into law, protected by police, beautified by media, and institutionalized by policy? What happens when the system itself was built by the hands of the oppressed, but the wealth it generated was inherited by the oppressor? White guilt is the emotional byproduct of that dynamic. It isn't born from empathy alone. It is born from knowledge. Knowledge that this system was rigged from the beginning. It is born from the tension of knowing that you live in the house your ancestors built with stolen bricks, and now you're upset that the wind howls at your door. But guilt alone is not progress. In fact, guilt without change is regression dressed up in moral panic, because guilt, if not channeled into structural transformation, becomes yet another tool of oppression. How? Because it redirects the conversation. How? It centers the wrong voice. Instead of focusing on the victims of injustice, the spotlight turns to the emotions of the guilty. Now it's about how they feel. Now it's about their shame, their remorse, their personal growth. But justice is not personal growth. Justice is structural dismantling. Justice does not ask how you feel about your privilege. Justice asks what you're willing to lose to dismantle it. The institutions that created this guilt have never been dismantled. The laws that protected slavery morphed into laws that protected segregation. Those laws evolved into policing practices, school district lines, voter suppression, economic exclusion, and cultural appropriation. The game changed its name, but never its purpose. And as long as these institutions remain untouched, white guilt becomes not a force for liberation, but a performance of it. You can't confess to a crime while continuing to benefit from its spoils. You can't say sorry while you still hold the keys to the stolen car. This is why white guilt is not justice. Justice is not a mood. Justice is not a moment of self-awareness. Justice is not a social media post, a book club, or a teary-eyed documentary. Justice is redistribution. Justice is reparation. Justice is land return. Justice is power shared, and none of that comes from guilt alone. Because guilt doesn't change power. Guilt doesn't rewrite laws. Guilt doesn't lift the foot off the neck. In fact, guilt often strengthens it by pacifying the guilty into believing that feeling bad is good enough. The truth is, white guilt has become a comfort zone, a therapeutic space for the privileged to talk about race without ever confronting their role in maintaining racial hierarchies. It becomes a brand, a persona, a label. People wear their guilt like a badge, as if admitting complicity is the same as rejecting it, but it's not. You can admit the fire exists and still warm your hands by it. You can condemn the system and still clock into its payroll. That's the paradox of guilt in a society where privilege has layers, where the system rewards confession but punishes disruption. When people talk about being woke, about being allies, about being on the right side of history, they often mean they've accepted their guilt. But acceptance is not enough. Acceptance without accountability is just resignation. It's saying, yes, the world is unfair, but what can I do? That's not justice. That's surrender. And that surrender keeps the structure standing. Because while the guilty are busy processing their emotions, the machinery of inequality keeps turning. The prisons keep filling. The wages stay low. The schools stay segregated. The police stay armed. The banks stay biased. And the cycle stays unbroken. We need to understand that guilt is not the first step toward justice. Truth is, and truth doesn't come wrapped in soft emotions. Truth is hard, it is brutal. It demands confrontation, it demands clarity, and most of all, it demands courage, because if the truth reveals complicity, then justice demands sacrifice. It means giving up something. It means dismantling what gave you power. It means facing the fact that your comfort came from someone else's suffering, that your opportunities were built on someone else's exclusion. But guilt resists that kind of confrontation. Guilt wants to be consoled. Guilt wants reassurance. Guilt says, I didn't mean to. Justice doesn't care what you meant. Justice cares what you did. Justice doesn't ask about your feelings. It asks about your actions. And this is why white guilt becomes a detour, a seductive emotional loop that keeps people from walking the hard road toward structural change. So when you hear someone express their guilt, don't applaud. Ask them what they're doing. Ask them what they're giving up. Ask them what they're willing to risk. Because if guilt isn't making them uncomfortable enough to change, then it's just another privilege, another indulgence, another distraction from the work that must be done. And that work does not begin with guilt. It begins with truth, and it ends with power shifting hands. Apology without action is performance, not progress. It is a script written for comfort, not correction. When someone stands before the world and says, I'm sorry, but walks away with the same power, the same privilege, the same position they held before, they've done nothing but recite lines in a play where justice is never the final act. Apology without action is an illusion, a costume draped over the same old system, pretending to be something new. It is the sound of someone trying to cleanse their conscience without cleaning up the mess they helped create. And in a world built on inequality, that kind of apology does not heal, it hides. In the theater of social change, we've seen enough of these performances. Corporate statements after injustice. Politicians bowing their heads after tragedy. Influencers crying into cameras after being exposed. But nothing changes. The same policies remain, the same people suffer. The same structures stand tall and untouched. That's because the apology is never meant to fix, it's meant to calm, to ease the outrage, to redirect the anger, to give the appearance of accountability without ever doing the hard work that accountability demands. They say sorry and they want applause for it. They say sorry and expect the past to vanish. But words don't rewrite history. Words don't feed the hungry. Words don't pay reparations. Words don't return land, open doors, or dismantle empires. Only action does that, and not just any action, transformative, uncomfortable, redistributive action. But performance will always choose ease over effort. It will choose optics over outcomes. It will choose to be seen grieving instead of being held responsible. We've watched entire institutions apologize for slavery, for segregation, for discrimination. But where are the budgets behind those apologies? Where are the policy changes? Where is the transfer of power? Where is the tangible redistribution of resources? If your apology doesn't shake the foundation that enabled your wrong, then you're not sorry, you're staging a scene, and while you're acting, real people are still dying, still struggling, still shouting to be heard over the noise of your empty remorse. Apology has become currency in a world addicted to appearances. Say the right thing and you can stay in power. Cry on camera and you get invited back. Kneel on a football field or wear the right shirt and suddenly you're transformed in the public eye. But performance is not transformation. It is camouflage. And when we allow apologies to be enough, we teach the powerful that their role in oppression can be erased with a single public gesture. We tell them that the ledger of injustice can be balanced without payment, without penance, without repair. Real accountability doesn't come with applause. It comes with consequences. It means surrendering something. It means giving up control. It means investing not in your image, but in the liberation of others. And that liberation cannot be achieved by sentiment. It requires systemic change. A system built on exclusion cannot be apologized away. A history of violence cannot be made clean with a press release. What's been stolen must be returned. What's been broken must be rebuilt. What's been silenced must be heard, not once, not for a photo op, but continuously as a new foundation. When people apologize without action, what they're really doing is preserving themselves. They are offering just enough to stay safe, just enough to seem human, just enough to escape real accountability. But we have to look beyond the surface. We have to ask what that apology costs them. Because if it costs nothing, it means nothing. If it doesn't threaten their status, disrupt their comfort, or transform their relationship to power, it is just noise. We must stop being moved by words that come without sacrifice. We must stop celebrating symbolism when what we need is substance. We must stop mistaking performance for progress, especially when the stage is soaked with the suffering of those who never got a chance to perform. The oppressed are never offered the privilege of apology as protection. They are punished. They are scrutinized. They are erased. So why should we allow the oppressor to cry, to speak, to bow, and then carry on as if the weight of their crimes has disappeared into thin air? A true apology is a beginning, not an ending. It opens the door to change, but the walk through that door is what matters. You don't just say sorry and get to stay in place. You don't apologize and expect silence. If your apology does not lead to structural correction, to active restitution, then it is a lie dressed up as empathy. Because if you were truly sorry, you'd be moved to act. You'd be compelled to change the conditions that made the apology necessary in the first place. You'd dismantle the systems that privileged you. You'd fight alongside the people those systems crushed. You'd put your money, your position, your influence on the line. That's what action looks like. That's what sincerity demands. It's not about how you feel. It's about what you do with that feeling. Because sorrow without action is just self-indulgence. It centers the wrong person. It makes the apology about the one who caused the harm, not the one who received it. We've reached a point where the performance of apology has become part of the oppression. It's used to buy time, to reset reputations, to regain trust without earning it. But we should be tired of that now. Tired of watching the same act play out again and again. Tired of tears without justice. Tired of statements without substance. Tired of a world that rewards the appearance of remorse more than the reality of reform. The path forward isn't paved with apologies. It's carved by actions. Actions that repair, that restore, that replace the old with the just. If you truly understand the pain caused, then you must do everything in your power to reverse it, to correct it, to dismantle the system that allowed it. And that is not a performance. That is the price of progress. The systems built on oppression still benefit the guilty while punishing the oppressed. This is not a theory or a metaphor. It is the living reality of the world we walk in every day. The streets are divided by legacy, the schools by zip code, the wages by skin color, the neighborhoods by invisible walls held up by red lines drawn decades ago. What was once enforced by chains and whips is now enforced by courts, contracts, and police reports. The language has changed, but the power structure remains untouched. What they call justice still looks like immunity for the powerful and surveillance for the powerless. These systems were not broken. They were designed this way. From the moment the first colonizer stepped foot on stolen soil, a blueprint was drafted: extract labor, extract land, extract life, then reward those who participate and punish those who resist. That blueprint was never destroyed. It was refined, it was adapted. It was passed down through banks, schools, corporations, and governments. It was coded into policy and hidden in tradition. It was normalized so completely that those who benefit from it today don't even realize they're standing on the bones of the oppressed. They don't realize, or they don't care. Because when a system works in your favor, it's easy to call it fair. It's easy to believe in meritocracy when your merit was measured with someone else's stolen tools. It's easy to say, work hard, when the playing field was cleared for you by centuries of unpaid labor. But the oppressed know the truth. They feel it in the way they're policed. They see it in the way their communities are divested from. They experience it in the courtroom, in the hospital, in the hiring room, in the classroom. It is a constant reminder that this system was never built for them. It was built on them. While the guilty inherit wealth, the oppressed inherit trauma. While the guilty walk freely, the oppressed are locked away. While the guilty are praised for change, the oppressed are punished for protest. You can trace it in every statistic. Look at incarceration rates. Look at home ownership. Look at maternal mortality. Look at who owns the land and who rents it. Look at who lends and who borrows. These are not coincidences. These are consequences. And behind every number is a name, a family, a future being shaped by a system designed to hold some people down while lifting others up. Even in moments of so-called progress, the system adapts to protect its core. When segregation was outlawed, redlining replaced it. When slavery was abolished, the prison system took its place. When civil rights legislation passed, voter suppression was redesigned. Every gain is met with a countermeasure. Every crack in the foundation is sealed with new cement. The names change, but the result is the same power remains in the same hands, and the cost is always paid by those at the bottom. And yet, the guilty continue to benefit, not because they earned it, but because the system was never built to hold them accountable. They inherit property that was once denied to others. They attend institutions funded by wealth never afforded to marginalized communities. They walk into job interviews with names that don't raise suspicion. They drive through neighborhoods without fear of being profiled. They make mistakes and are forgiven. They break laws and are believed. The system works for them, and they mistake that for fairness. They confuse comfort with justice. Meanwhile, the oppressed are told to be patient, to be peaceful, to wait, to behave, to be twice as good for half as much. They are told to pull themselves up by bootstraps they never had. They are told to climb ladders with missing rungs. They are told that the system will change if they just believe in it a little harder, vote a little more, work a little longer. But the truth is, the system is working exactly as it was designed, to maintain control, to preserve privilege, and to protect the guilty from consequence. This isn't about individual villains, it's about institutional violence. It's not about who's nice or who's not racist. It's about who the laws protect and who they punish. It's about who has access and who's denied. It's about structure. And as long as those structures remain, oppression will continue. No matter how many apologies are made, no matter how many books are read, no matter how many diversity seminars are attended, the guilty will keep benefiting because the system makes it easy for them to do so. They don't have to act maliciously. All they have to do is nothing, and the system will keep delivering. To truly confront this reality is to recognize that dismantling these systems is not just about empathy. It's about power. It's about giving up advantages that were never earned. It's about making room in places that were once exclusive. It's about changing rules that were always rigged. And that kind of change doesn't come from comfort. It comes from disruption. But the guilty fear disruption, because deep down they know the ground they stand on is unstable. They know the house was built on a foundation of theft, and so they cling to the system, defend it, disguise it, even as it devours the lives of those beneath it. So they invest in narratives that justify their position. They rewrite history to clean the blood from the pages. They criminalize poverty. They romanticize empire. They celebrate independence while ignoring who paid the price for it. They teach their children that fairness is a given, never admitting that fairness was stolen from someone else. And in doing so, they ensure that the cycle continues, that the benefits keep flowing one way while the burdens flow the other. But the truth does not die in silence. It waits. It builds. It grows louder with every generation that refuses to accept the lie. And though the system still punishes the oppressed and protects the guilty, that protection is fragile. Because history has a way of returning to collect its debt. Because truth has a way of breaking through even the strongest walls. Because there comes a time when the cries of the oppressed cannot be ignored. When the imbalance becomes too sharp, too obvious, too enraging to accept. And in that time, no amount of comfort, wealth, or denial will be enough to protect the system from the reckoning it has long delayed. True solidarity demands sacrifice, not sentiment. It does not begin with kind words or empathetic gestures. It does not end with tears or social media posts. Solidarity is not about how you feel, it is about what you are willing to give up. Because the truth is, you cannot stand with the oppressed while clinging to the benefits of their oppression. You cannot declare yourself an ally while refusing to surrender the privileges that the system has handed you on a silver platter. Solidarity is not a title, it is a test. And it is not passed through performance. It is passed through action that costs you something. In a world where injustice is not accidental but engineered, standing on the side of the oppressed requires more than symbolic gestures. It requires stepping into discomfort. It means putting your body, your wealth, your influence on the line. It means using your access not to climb higher, but to open the doors others have been locked out of. It means saying no to systems that have always said yes to you. It means understanding that the path toward justice is not paved with hashtags and applause, but with hard choices and deep losses. People love to say they stand in solidarity, but many of them stand only until it gets uncomfortable. They stand only until their jobs are threatened, their status is questioned, their reputation is challenged. They speak out until the backlash comes, then retreat into silence. They donate money but won't confront their families. They protest one day and benefit from the system the next. But that is not solidarity. That is sympathy wearing a mask. That is comfort pretending to be courage. Real solidarity shows up when it's inconvenient, when it costs relationships, opportunities, safety, when it means risking something you were taught to protect, when it forces you to speak truths that others don't want to hear. Not because it will make you look good, but because silence would make you complicit. It is easy to say Black Lives Matter. It is harder to reject the job offer at a company that exploits black labor. It is harder to divest from a system that was built on exploitation. It is harder to give up power when you've grown used to having it. But that is what solidarity demands. Because solidarity is not about standing next to someone in their struggle, it's about being willing to bear that struggle with them. It's about understanding that your liberation is tied to theirs. That as long as one group is oppressed, freedom is a lie for everyone. It means fighting not just for inclusion into the system, but for the destruction of the system that excluded others in the first place. It means building something entirely new together and accepting that your role may no longer be at the top. This requires more than moral outrage. It requires political commitment. It means not just feeling bad about inequality, but taking responsibility for how you benefit from it. It means examining your workplace, your neighborhood, your school, your government, and asking who is missing here and why. It means being brave enough to confront your own reflection and see the ways you've been protected, shielded, lifted while others have been denied, punished, and buried. Solidarity cannot be passive. It is not something you claim. It is something you prove again and again, especially when it's hard. And it can't be temporary. It can't disappear when the news cycle changes, when the protests fade, when the attention moves elsewhere. It must live in your decisions, in your priorities, in the way you move through the world. It must become the lens through which you see everything, who gets to speak, who gets to lead, who gets left behind. Too many people want to be seen as good without doing good. Too many want to be absolved without being involved. Too many want justice without redistribution, peace without pressure, change without challenge. But justice does not come free. It demands that those who have benefited from the system begin to dismantle it with their own hands. Not out of guilt, but out of responsibility. Not out of pity, but out of principle. Not because it makes them look righteous, but because it's the right thing to do. That means risking comfort, risking stability, risking being misunderstood. It means letting go of the idea that you can fix everything from the outside. True solidarity means stepping inside the fight and listening, not leading. Following, not managing. Amplifying, not dominating. It means centering the voices of those who have been silenced and being quiet enough to hear them. It means using your power to shift the balance, not reinforce it. The world doesn't need more people who feel bad. It needs more people who do what is necessary. Who organize, who protest, who redistribute, who build new systems from the ground up. People who are willing to lose so that others may win. Who are willing to be last so that others may finally be first. Who understand that true justice requires sacrifice, and that without sacrifice, every word, every gesture, every statement is just performance. The test of solidarity is not in the moment of crisis. It is in the quiet decisions that shape daily life. It is in who you hire, who you vote for, who you stand beside when the cameras are gone. It is in how you spend your money, how you raise your children, how you challenge your peers. It is in whether you are willing to make room where there was once exclusion, whether you are willing to build ladders where there were once walls. Solidarity is not sentimental. It is structural. It demands that you do more than feel. You must act. You must surrender privilege, share power, and accept that real change comes with real cost. Because if your solidarity costs you nothing, it is not solidarity. It is self-interest with a mask of morality. And until more people are willing to trade sentiment for sacrifice, justice will remain just beyond reach.